The words hit me like a physical blow, each syllable a hammer-stroke against the fragile glass of my dream. "Miss Vance," Mr. Thorne had purred, his voice dripping with condescension. "Your business plan, while quaint, lacks substance, and your collateral? Frankly, it's laughable." The hushed whispers of the other bank patrons were the real torture, each sympathetic glance a fresh wound. My cheeks burned, not just from humiliation, but from the raw, exposed feeling of my entire world crumbling in a sterile, brightly lit room. He leaned back in his plush leather chair, a predator enjoying the kill, his smile a cruel slash across his face. "Perhaps you should consider a hobby, Miss Vance. Baking is, after all, a delightful pastime, not a viable investment." He dismissed me with a flick of his manicured hand, as if swatting away a fly. I wanted to scream, to shatter the polished silence, to throw the perfectly crafted business plan I'd poured my soul into right back in his smug face, but I couldn't. All I could do was stand there, rooted to the spot, feeling the weight of his words, the public spectacle of my failure. This was the moment my dream died, or so I thought. But what if it wasn't the end? What if this humiliation was just the prologue to a comeback story so audacious, so satisfying, it would leave him speechless? Stick around, because this is the story of how a condescending bank manager tried to bury my dream, and how I ended up buying the ground he stood on. It's a story about flour, fortitude, and the sweetest kind of revenge. Don't miss a single crumb. My hands trembled as I clutched the folder, the crisp edges of my meticulously prepared business plan feeling like razor blades against my clammy palms. For months, the flourish had been more than a dream. It was a blueprint for my entire future. I'd spent countless nights perfecting recipes, envisioning the warm glow of the bakery lights, the scent of fresh sourdough, the laughter of customers. My grandmother, a baker herself, had always told me that bread was life, and I believed it. I saw myself, apron-clad, kneading dough, shaping loaves, a quiet artist creating edible joy. The space I'd found, a charming corner unit with large windows, felt destined. I'd sketched layouts, chosen paint swatches, even picked out the vintage oven I'd restore. Every detail, every calculation was a testament to my unwavering belief. This loan from First City Bank wasn't just capital, it was the key to unlocking that future. Mr. Thorne, the branch manager, had a reputation for being stern but fair, or so I'd been told. His office, all dark wood and intimidating silence, felt less like a place of opportunity and more like an interrogation chamber. He hadn't even bothered to open the full proposal. He'd flipped through the summary, his eyes barely grazing the pages detailing my market research, my projected profits, the comprehensive plan for community engagement. "Artisan bakery," he'd scoffed, the word artisan tasting like an insult on his tongue. "In this economy, Miss Vance, people want convenience, not quaintness." His gaze, sharp and dismissive, had lingered on my well-worn apron, a silent judgment. "And your experience? A home baker, enthusiastic, I'm sure, but hardly a foundation for a significant investment." He'd tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the table, a sound like a gavel striking down my hopes. "We deal in tangible assets, Miss Vance, not aspirations." The public denial had been worse. He'd called me out from his office into the waiting area. "Miss Vance, I'm afraid we simply cannot approve your application. The risk assessment is, shall we say, overwhelmingly negative." His voice carried, intentionally, through the hushed bank lobby. Heads had turned. I'd felt every single pair of eyes on me, burning holes through my carefully constructed facade of composure. A young teller, her face etched with pity, had averted her gaze. That look, more than Thorne's words, had truly broken me. It confirmed what he was trying to make me feel, that I was a fool, a dreamer, utterly out of my depth. I walked out of that bank, the automatic doors sliding shut behind me like the gates of a prison, trapping my dreams inside. The city street, usually bustling with energy, felt strangely muted, as if the sound had been drained from the world. My vision blurred. Each step was heavy, dragging me further from the future I'd meticulously planned. The air felt thick, suffocating. I didn't cry. The tears were trapped somewhere deep inside, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. My hands were balled into fists, nails digging into my palms, a desperate attempt to feel something, anything, besides this crushing emptiness. I wanted to disappear, to vanish from the face of the earth and escape the echo of Thorne's condescending laugh, the weight of his words, laughable, quaint, hobby, pressed down on me, threatening to crush every last shred of confidence. I stumbled past storefronts, a blur of reflections, none of them showing the vibrant, hopeful baker I'd been just an hour ago. The dream of the flourish, once so vivid, now felt like a cruel joke, a foolish fantasy. But as I walked, numb and adrift, a spark ignited somewhere deep within, a tiny, defiant ember in the ashes of my humiliation. He had called me a hobbyist. He had dismissed my passion as a trivial pastime. He had tried to bury me with his arrogance and his power. But what if he was wrong? What if his dismissal was not a judgment of my worth, but a testament to his own short-sightedness? The thought, fleeting at first, began to gather strength, pushing back against the tide of despair. I stopped abruptly, my gaze snagging on a faded "For Lease" sign taped to the window of a dilapidated storefront, nestled between a laundromat and a dusty antique shop. It wasn't the charming corner unit I'd dreamed of. It was small, grimy, and seemed to sag under the weight of neglect. The windows were boarded up in places, the paint peeling, the sign barely legible. It was everything Thorne had implied I was: insignificant, forgotten. But as I stared at it, a different kind of vision began to form. Not the grand, polished flourish I'd meticulously planned, but something smaller, grittier, a raw, defiant seed pushing through concrete, a tiny, impossible hope, a desperate whisper in the wind. Could I start there? Could I build something from nothing, right here, without his permission, without his approval? The question hung in the stale city air, a challenge, a dare, a tiny promise that this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a different kind of fight. The "For Lease" sign on that derelict storefront felt like a cruel joke, yet I clung to it. My hands trembled as I typed "small business loan alternative" into my search bar, the humiliation of Thorne's words still ringing in my ears. He had dissected my business plan, the flourish, with surgical precision, not to offer constructive criticism, but to carve away my confidence piece by agonizing piece. A bakery, Miss Vance, in this economy, and such ambitious projections for artisan bread? Frankly, it's naive. We don't fund hobbies, we fund viable enterprises. His voice, amplified by the bank's open plan layout, carried to every teller, every customer. I had felt every eye on me, shrinking under the weight of his pronouncement. My face burned, but I forced myself to stand, to gather my meticulously prepared binders, my hands shaking so violently the papers rustled like dry leaves. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Thorne," I managed, my voice a thin whisper. He merely offered a dismissive wave, already turning to his next appointment. Leaving that bank, I felt hollowed out, my carefully constructed dream shattered, but the hollow feeling quickly filled with a simmering defiance. Thorne might not fund hobbies, but the flourish was no hobby. It was my life, my passion, baked into every crumb. I spent the next few weeks in a blur of desperate action. I applied for every microloan I could find, only to be met with similar patronizing smiles and offers of sums so minuscule they wouldn't cover a month's rent. Crowdfunding campaigns went nowhere, swallowed by the noise of 1,000 other hopefuls. Each rejection, though less public than Thorne's, chipped away at me, leaving me exhausted, running on stale coffee and the sheer stubbornness of my dream. The dilapidated storefront remained a distant, impossible beacon. I didn't have the capital for a lease, let alone renovations. One morning, staring at my overflowing oven, filled with loaves I had no retail outlet for, a different idea sparked. Not a grand opening, not a storefront, but a small, manageable step, the local farmer's market. It was a long shot, but it was a shot. I pulled out my old, slightly dented food truck plans, adjusted them for a simple market stall, and began to bake. No fancy equipment, just my home kitchen, my 2 hands, and a relentless drive. I worked through the night, kneading dough until my forearms ached, the smell of rising yeast filling my small apartment. My first market day was a nerve-wracking blur. I set up a modest table under a borrowed canopy, a handwritten sign proudly declaring, "The Flourish, Artisan, Breads and Pastries." The early hours were slow, filled with polite but uncommitted glances. Then a man approached my stall. He was older, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a tailored jacket that seemed a little out of place among the produce vendors. He picked up a sourdough boule, inhaled deeply, and a small smile touched his lips. "This smells authentic," he said, his voice quiet but authoritative. "What's your story, Alara?" He had read my name tag. I stumbled through a brief, edited version of my journey, omitting the thorn humiliation, focusing on my passion. He listened intently, then bought 3 loaves, handing me a crisp $20 bill. "Keep the change," he said. "This is a good start." He introduced himself as Leo, but offered no further details about his profession. He just became a regular. Every Saturday he bought my apple tarts, observed me as I interacted with customers, and occasionally offered a seemingly casual comment about the market's foot traffic or the local community's needs. "People here appreciate quality," he'd say, "but they also look for value and a story." His words, simple as they were, started to reshape my approach. I began offering samples, engaging more directly with customers, sharing the story behind each loaf. Slowly, steadily, the Flourish pop-up gained traction. Lines began to form at my stall. My sourdough boules became a local favorite, my apple tarts legendary. Word spread through the community like wildfire. People started pre-ordering, asking if I had a permanent location. The money I made, though still far from bank loan territory, was real, tangible proof of concept. My confidence, once shattered, began to mend, stitch by painstaking stitch. One sunny Saturday, after a particularly busy morning, Leo lingered as I packed up. He watched me count the day's earnings, a satisfied hum escaping my lips. "You've built something here, Ilara," he stated, his gaze sweeping over the dwindling crowd. "A real following. You proved them wrong, didn't you?" He didn't specify who "them" was, but I knew. He knew. "This is just the beginning," I replied, a new resolve hardening my voice. Leo smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "I agree. And sometimes the beginning is just what you need to see the bigger picture. This market stall is good, Alara. But what if I told you there's a whole building, prime commercial real estate, about to hit the market, right in the city center?" He paused, letting the implication hang in the air, a silent challenge. A building that might just be perfect for the Flourish, in a location that could change everything. The aroma of fresh sourdough and cinnamon permeated my small apartment, now a makeshift bakery running at full capacity. The farmer's market stall had exploded. What started as a desperate attempt to stay afloat had transformed into a phenomenon. Week after week, lines snaked around my tent, customers clamoring for the Flourish's artisan loaves, my grandmother's apple tarts, and the ever-popular blueberry scones. I baked from dusk till dawn, often falling asleep amidst flour dust and cooling racks. My hands, once soft, were now calloused, but every ache was a testament to a dream refusing to die. I hired 2 part-time assistants, local college students eager for extra cash, teaching them my recipes, sharing the secrets of fermentation and flaky crusts. Their presence eased the physical burden, but the mental load of managing a burgeoning business weighed heavily. I juggled orders, managed inventory, and handled customer complaints, learning on the fly. I was no longer just a baker, I was an entrepreneur, albeit one operating out of a cramped kitchen. Leo watched it all. He became a regular fixture at my stall, not just as a customer, but as an observer. He'd buy a loaf, then linger, watching me interact with customers, handle cash, and manage the growing chaos. One brisk Saturday morning, as the last scone sold out before noon, he approached me. "Ilara," he said, his voice calm amidst the market bustle, "you've built something remarkable here, but you're hitting a ceiling." I knew he was right. My apartment kitchen couldn't sustain the demand much longer. "I'm looking for a commercial space," I admitted, "but rent is brutal and the good spots are already taken." Leo nodded, then pulled out a folded blueprint from his satchel. I think I have a better idea than just a commercial space. I've been following your progress. Your product is exceptional, your brand resonates, and your work ethic is unmatched. I want to invest, not just as a silent partner but as a strategic one. My heart pounded. This was it, the real leap. Invest in what exactly? I asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but my voice trembled slightly. He spread the blueprint on my makeshift counter, pointing to a prominent building in the city center. This building, he stated, tapping a finger on a large, familiar structure. It's on the market. My eyes followed his finger and my breath hitched. It was the monolithic, gray building that housed the First City Bank, Mr. Thorne's domain. The same bank where he'd crushed my dream. My stomach twisted. The bank building? I whispered, disbelief coloring my tone. That's impossible. It's huge, multi-story. Not impossible, Leo corrected, his gaze steady. The parent company is struggling. They're quietly divesting non-core assets. This entire building is up for sale. Not just a floor, not just a storefront. The whole thing. A jolt went through me. A mix of shock, vindication, and a terrifying surge of ambition. The idea wasn't just to rent a space. It was to own the very ground Thorne stood on. The poetic justice of it was almost too much to bear. But the cost, I stammered. It must be astronomical. It is, Leo conceded. But consider the opportunity. Prime location, multiple tenants, and the potential to build something truly iconic. Your bakery could be the anchor tenant, a flagship store, and we could lease out the rest. My network of investors is extensive. With your vision and my experience in real estate and capital acquisition, we could make this happen. My mind reeled. This wasn't just about a bakery anymore. This was about a statement, about reclaiming what had been taken, not with anger, but with overwhelming success. The humiliation Thorne inflicted had been public. My triumph, if this worked, would be undeniable. You're serious? I asked, my voice barely audible. Dead serious, but it will be complex. It will require absolute discretion. The bank cannot know our intentions. Not yet. We'd have to move fast and quietly. Over the next few weeks, my life became a blur of flower and financial models. Leo introduced me to his legal team, a formidable group of corporate lawyers who spoke in terms I barely understood, but whose efficiency was undeniable. We held clandestine meetings, often late at night, poring over blueprints, zoning laws, and intricate financial projections. Leo taught me about due diligence, about real estate valuation, and about structuring a multi-million-dollar acquisition. He brought in his network of high-net-worth individuals, presenting The Flourish as a compelling case study of a thriving local business ready for massive expansion, backed by a strategic real estate play. I found myself in boardrooms, not kitchens, pitching my vision with a newfound confidence that surprised even myself. I spoke not just of bread, but of community, of revitalization, of creating a destination. The biggest challenge was funding. The sheer scale of the building required significant capital. Leo had access to substantial funds, but even his resources weren't enough to cover the entire purchase. We needed to secure a significant loan. A loan so large it dwarfed the small business application Thorne had scoffed at. The irony was not lost on me. We approached a different bank, a larger, more progressive institution, presenting our meticulously crafted business plan. This time, I wasn't asking for a handout. I was presenting a calculated investment opportunity. I was no longer the naive baker. I was a co-principal in a major real estate venture. The negotiations were grueling. Competing bids emerged, pushing the price higher. There were moments of intense doubt, late-night calls filled with legal jargon and agonizing decisions. But with Leo's unwavering calm and strategic genius, we navigated each hurdle. He taught me to anticipate, to pivot, to play the long game. The target date for submitting our final, binding offer loomed large. Every document was reviewed, every number double-checked. The stakes were astronomical. Not just financially, but emotionally. This wasn't just about owning a building. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about proving that a dream, once shattered, could rise stronger, larger, more resilient than anyone, especially Mr. Thorne, could have imagined. We had secured the financing. The legal team had finalized the paperwork. All that remained was the signature. The moment of truth was upon us. We were ready to make our offer. A silent declaration of war that the bank, completely oblivious, would soon discover. Submitting our binding offer felt like an act of war, a quiet, meticulously planned invasion. Leo handled the initial delivery, a thick stack of documents hand-delivered by a discreet courier to the selling entity's legal team. My heart pounded for days as we waited, a nervous rhythm beneath every task at the bakery. We still operated from the smaller rented space, but it buzzed with a different kind of energy now. Every batch of sourdough, every meticulously decorated cupcake felt like a brick in the foundation of something far grander. The first response was a counteroffer, higher than we'd anticipated, forcing us back to the drawing board. They know it's prime real estate, Leo explained, his voice calm, but I saw the calculating glint in his eyes. Someone else is interested. A competing bid. The air thickened with tension. This wasn't just about the building anymore, it was a race. We spent sleepless nights poring over projections, recalculating, stretching our resources to their absolute limit. Leo brought in more silent investors from his network, individuals who trusted his vision and our proven track record with the Flourish. Each new commitment was a vote of confidence, but also another layer of pressure. The numbers were staggering, a sum that, a year ago, would have been an incomprehensible fantasy. My stomach churned with a mix of excitement and terror. Was this truly about expanding the Flourish, or was a part of me driven by the ghost of Mr. Thorne's sneer? "This isn't about revenge, Alara," Leo had said, sensing my turmoil during one particularly intense strategy session. We were hunched over blueprints, the bank building's layout spread across his large conference table. It's about seizing an opportunity. It's about building something significant. The fact that it's that building, well, that's just a bonus. His words were a steadying hand, pulling me back to the core mission. Growth, not retribution. Yet, the thought of Thorne's face when he realized who his new landlord was, it was a powerful motivator, a quiet, simmering satisfaction. The negotiations dragged on for weeks, a grueling dance of proposals and counter-proposals. Every phone call from Leo's team sent a jolt through me. There were moments I wanted to pull back, to tell him it was too much, too risky. The legal team found a minor easement dispute with a neighboring property, a snag that threatened to derail the entire deal. Leo worked tirelessly, negotiating with the city, ensuring the issue would be resolved post-acquisition without affecting our plans. His dedication was unwavering, mirroring my own fierce commitment to the Flourish. He didn't just see a building, he saw the potential for a thriving community hub, a legacy. Then, one Tuesday morning, the call came. Not a counteroffer, not a problem, but an acceptance. "They've signed," Leo said, his voice unusually subdued, almost reverent. "We close in 2 weeks." The words hung in the air, immense and heavy. The building, the one with the imposing facade and the bank branch where my dreams had been publicly shredded, was ours. A quiet, almost disbelieving triumph settled over me. There was no fanfare, no champagne, just a shared, knowing glance with Leo across the table, a silent acknowledgement of the mountain we had just moved. The closing itself was a blur of signatures, witnessed by lawyers and notaries. The weight of the official documents in my hand, bearing my name, Ilara Vance, as part owner of the entire commercial property, was surreal. I didn't feel rich or powerful. I felt an immense sense of responsibility and a deep, quiet satisfaction. The building was a blank canvas, ready for the Flourish to bloom within its walls, to reclaim the space that had once held so much pain. Now, the final act approached. For weeks, Leo and I had been planning the reveal. It couldn't be a phone call, not a letter. It had to be personal, direct. We debated the timing, the approach. "It needs to be undeniable," Leo insisted. A clear statement of fact, not an act of gloating. We decided on a Monday morning, first thing, the start of a new week, a new era. I picked out a simple but impeccably tailored dress, a dark forest green that made me feel grounded, confident, not the meek, desperate girl who had walked into Mr. Thorne's office a year ago. That girl was gone. The night before, I barely slept. The adrenaline hummed through my veins. I pictured Thorne's face, that condescending smirk. It wouldn't be there tomorrow. I practiced the words in my head, simple, professional, devoid of emotion. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne. We are Ilara Vance and Leo Sterling. We are your new landlords." It felt sharp, clean. The morning dawned crisp and clear. I took a deep breath, the scent of fresh coffee in the air. Leo arrived precisely on time. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. We stepped out, the city waking around us, and walked towards the imposing glass doors of the First National Bank. Submitting our binding offer felt like an act of war, a quiet, meticulously planned invasion. Leo handled the initial delivery, a thick stack of documents hand-delivered by a discreet courier to the selling entity's legal team. My heart pounded for days as we waited, a nervous rhythm beneath every task at the bakery. We still operated from the smaller, rented space, but it buzzed with a different kind of energy now. Every batch of sourdough, every meticulously decorated cupcake felt like a brick in the foundation of something far grander. The first response was a counteroffer, higher than we'd anticipated, forcing us back to the drawing board. "They know it's prime real estate," Leo explained, his voice calm, but I saw the calculating glint in his eyes. Someone else is interested. A competing bid. The air thickened with tension. This wasn't just about the building anymore. It was a race. We spent sleepless nights poring over projections, recalculating, stretching our resources to their absolute limit. Leo brought in more silent investors from his network, individuals who trusted his vision and our proven track record with the Flourish. Each new commitment was a vote of confidence, but also another layer of pressure. The numbers were staggering, a sum that, a year ago, would have been an incomprehensible fantasy. My stomach churned with a mix of excitement and terror. Was this truly about expanding the Flourish, or was a part of me driven by the ghost of Mr. Thorne's sneer? "This isn't about revenge, Ilara," Leo had said, sensing my turmoil during one particularly intense strategy session. We were hunched over blueprints, the bank building's layout spread across his large conference table. "It's about seizing an opportunity. It's about building something significant. The fact that it's that building, well, that's just a bonus." His words were a steadying hand, pulling me back to the core mission, growth, not retribution. Yet, the thought of Thorne's face when he realized who his new landlord was, it was a powerful motivator, a quiet, simmering satisfaction. The negotiations dragged on for weeks, a grueling dance of proposals and counter-proposals. Every phone call from Leo's team sent a jolt through me. There were moments I wanted to pull back, to tell him it was too much, too risky. The legal team found a minor easement dispute with a neighboring property, a snag that threatened to derail the entire deal. Leo worked tirelessly, negotiating with the city, ensuring the issue would be resolved post-acquisition without affecting our plans. His dedication was unwavering, mirroring my own fierce commitment to the Flourish. He didn't just see a building, he saw the potential for a thriving community hub, a legacy. Then, one Tuesday morning, the call came. Not a counteroffer, not a problem, but an acceptance. "They've signed," Leo said, his voice unusually subdued, almost reverent. "We close in 2 weeks." The words hung in the air, immense and heavy. The building, the one with the imposing facade and the bank branch where my dreams had been publicly shredded, was ours. A quiet, almost disbelieving triumph settled over me. There was no fanfare, no champagne, just a shared, knowing glance with Leo across the table, a silent acknowledgement of the mountain we had just moved. The closing itself was a blur of signatures, witnessed by lawyers and notaries. The weight of the official documents in my hand, bearing my name, Ilara Vance, as part owner of the entire commercial property, was surreal. I didn't feel rich or powerful. I felt an immense sense of responsibility and a deep, quiet satisfaction. The building was a blank canvas, ready for the Flourish to bloom within its walls, to reclaim the space that had once held so much pain. Now, the final act approached. For weeks, Leo and I had been planning the reveal. It couldn't be a phone call, not a letter. It had to be personal, direct. We debated the timing, the approach. "It needs to be undeniable," Leo insisted. "A clear statement of fact, not an act of gloating." We decided on a Monday morning, First thing, the start of a new week, a new era. I picked out a simple but impeccably tailored dress, a dark forest green that made me feel grounded, confident. Not the meek, desperate girl who had walked into Mr. Thorne's office a year ago. That girl was gone. The night before, I barely slept. The adrenaline hummed through my veins. I pictured Thorne's face, that condescending smirk. It wouldn't be there tomorrow. I practiced the words in my head. Simple, professional, devoid of emotion. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne. We are Elara Vance and Leo Sterling. We are your new landlords." It felt sharp, clean. The morning dawned crisp and clear. I took a deep breath, the scent of fresh coffee in the air. Leo arrived precisely on time. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. We stepped out, the city waking around us, and walked towards the imposing glass doors of the First National Bank. The polished brass handles of the First National Bank felt cool under my touch. Leo pushed the door open. A silent invitation. The air inside hummed with the familiar low murmur of transactions, the faint scent of old paper and ambition. My gaze swept across the marble floor, the teller windows, the imposing mahogany desk in the corner. Mr. Thorne's desk. He sat hunched over a stack of papers, his bald spot catching the overhead light. He hadn't seen us yet. My heart beat a steady rhythm, not of fear, but of anticipation. I was no longer the trembling girl who'd walked out of here a year ago, shattered. My steps were deliberate, firm on the polished stone. Leo walked beside me, his presence a quiet anchor. A bank employee, a young woman with a polite smile, approached us. "Can I help you?" she asked. "We have an appointment with Mr. Thorne," Leo stated, his voice calm and authoritative. "He's expecting us." The woman glanced at Thorne, then back at us. "I don't see anything in his calendar for—" "It's a private matter," I interjected, stepping forward. My voice was clear, steady. Thorne looked up then, alerted by the slight shift in the air. His eyes, initially dismissive, narrowed as they landed on me. A flicker of recognition, followed by a familiar, condescending smirk. He pushed his chair back, slowly rising. Well, if it isn't Miss Vance," he drawled, his tone dripping with false cordiality. "Back so soon? I trust you're not here for another consultation." He emphasized the word, making it sound like a dirty secret. He glanced at Leo, a dismissive flick of his eyes. "And who is this?" "Mr. Thorne," I began, my voice even. "We're not here for a loan. We're here to discuss a change in your tenancy." His smirk faltered. "My tenancy? What on earth are you talking about?" He looked from me to Leo, his brow furrowing. "This is a bank, Miss Vance, not a charity." Leo stepped forward, producing a thick manila envelope from his briefcase. He placed it squarely on Thorne's desk. The slight thud echoed in the hushed bank lobby. "Mr. Thorne," Leo said, his voice low but cutting through the air. "My partner, Ms. Vance, and I, through Flourish Holdings, LLC, completed the acquisition of this building, 1420 Main Street, this morning." Thorne's eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to Leo, then to me. His face, usually a mask of self-importance, began to drain of color. "Acquisition? What are you saying?" His voice was a thin thread. "We are saying, Mr. Thorne," I stated, my gaze unwavering, "that as of 9 a.m. today, you are leasing your branch space from us. We are your new landlords." The silence in the bank became deafening. Thorne's jaw dropped. His eyes widened, darting between me and Leo as if searching for a hidden camera, a punchline. He picked up the envelope, his fingers fumbling with the flap. He pulled out a document, his gaze scanning the bolded legal text. The color completely vanished from his face, leaving it ashen. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The condescension, the arrogance, the smug superiority, it all evaporated, replaced by raw, unadulterated shock. He looked like a man who'd just been struck by lightning. The young bank employee, who had hovered nearby, now watched with wide, horrified eyes. Other tellers, sensing the tension, paused their work, their heads subtly turning. "This is impossible," Thorne finally managed, his voice a hoarse whisper. "This building wasn't on the market. It was, quietly," Leo corrected him, "a strategic divestiture by a struggling parent company. We just happened to be in a position to move quickly and decisively." He paused, a hint of steel in his tone. Your lease is up for renewal in 6 months, Mr. Thorne. We'll be in touch regarding the new terms. Or, should you prefer, the terms of your relocation. I watched Thorne's world crumble before his eyes. The man who had reveled in my public humiliation now stood exposed, vulnerable, and completely outmaneuvered. There was no anger in me, no desire to gloat, just a profound sense of quiet satisfaction. The victory wasn't loud or vengeful. It was simply a fact, undeniable and complete. I had faced my biggest fear, endured the deepest shame, and emerged stronger, smarter, and with a true partner by my side. Thorne slumped back into his chair, the document trembling in his hands. He looked utterly defeated. We had said what needed to be said. There was nothing more to add. Leo gave a small, polite nod. "Good day, Mr. Thorne." We turned and walked out of the bank. The sunlight outside felt brighter, the air crisper. The world had not just shifted, it had completely reordered itself. Within months, the First National Bank branch relocated to a smaller, less prominent space across town. Mr. Thorne, I heard, was eventually transferred to a regional office. His career trajectory permanently altered, but my focus was elsewhere. The Flourish, my bakery, now occupied the prime ground floor retail space of 1420 Main Street. We'd spent weeks renovating, transforming the sterile bank interior into a warm, inviting haven of rich wood, soft lighting, and the irresistible aroma of fresh-baked bread and pastries. The grand opening was a joyous blur of happy faces, the clinking of coffee cups, and the buzz of conversation. We had more than doubled our capacity, added new menu items, and hired a team of passionate bakers and baristas. The Flourish quickly became a beloved cornerstone of the community, a place where people gathered, celebrated, and found comfort in every bite. I stood one morning, a few months after the opening, watching the line of customers stretch out the door. The sun streamed through the large front windows, illuminating motes of flour dancing in the air. Leo sat at a corner table, reviewing some blueprints for our next community project, a quiet smile on his face. He caught my eye and we shared a knowing glance. This wasn't just a bakery. It was a testament to resilience, a monument to the power of a dream nurtured through adversity. I thought about Mr. Thorne sometimes, but the bitterness was long gone. His condescension had been a catalyst, an unintended gift. It had forced me to dig deeper, to find strength I didn't know I possessed, and to forge a path that was truly my own. I hadn't just built a successful business. I had built a life on my own terms, a life rooted in passion, partnership, and purpose. The sweetest victory wasn't the humiliation of another, but the quiet, profound realization of my own worth, baked into every loaf, every pastry, every shared moment in the Flourish. I was home, and it smelled like success.